Hi, I'm Kline from Discount Aquarium Fish and Reef in Tempe, Arizona, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about protein skimmers. First off, hang-on skimmers, let's just get those out of the way. Hang-on skimmers generally do not have a way to adjust them. If they do, they're going to have a cup with a band on it, or it's going to have a screw on the side of the body that allows you to move this cup up and down. For adjusting those, it's pretty simple. If you're getting too much water in the cup, skim mate's not thick enough, you're going to raise that cup up. If you're not getting enough coming up into the tube, you're going to lower that cup. That's pretty much it as far as your hang-on protein skimmers. So not a lot you can do with those or need to do with those as far as adjustment. Lots of things you need to know about in-sump protein skimmers. First off, as far as our discussion goes, we're going to assume that you're buying a new or used skimmer for a sump that you already have. If you already have a skimmer in that sump, all of this stuff will still apply. So you can listen to the video and hopefully most of those things you'll be able to deal with the skimmer that you already have for your sump. First off, you're going to need to know a few things about the skimmer that you're thinking about. I like to look them up on Bulk Reef Supply because they tend to have the information that we're looking for. The first thing is footprint of the skimmer. This is a Bubble Mangus Curve 7. It's a pretty popular protein skimmer. It's got a footprint of 9.25 by 7.87. Generally, a sump is going to have more than the 9.25 in width. So you're only going to need to have the 7.87 plus a couple inches to spare. So let's say 9 or 10 inches in width of that baffle coming over in the sump for that skimmer to be able to fit. If you're buying one, you need to make sure that you have enough footprint for it to go in. And if you're building a sump and you're baffling, you want that section to be as small as possible with the skimmer still fitting in it, so that you have the rest of the sump left for refugium, return pump section, filter sponge, etc. You don't want to waste extra space if you don't have to in that skimmer section area. The next thing is the height of the skimmer. This one is 20.8 inches tall. They're measured to the top of the cup. What you're going to want to make sure of is if this skimmer is sitting on the bottom of your sump, that you have enough room. This cup only needs to come up a tiny bit to come out. So you want to just make sure that with the beams in your stand or whatever you may have, that you've got enough room for the height of the skimmer that you're looking at. Recommended water level. Probably the most important thing here. Your water level in your protein skimmer section in a sump needs to be constant. Most of the time it is. The water goes into that section, it spills over into the rest of the sump, so it has a constant water level, and sometimes that's adjustable with a slider door, sometimes it's not. You're going to want to know what your water level is in the sump because you're going to look up the water level for your skimmer. The water level for this one is 9.5 to 11 inches, so if your water level is within that range, then you're okay for this skimmer. If your water level is lower than that range, you're probably still going to be okay with skimmer adjustment, but it's not going to be optimal for what they're recommending. If your water level happens to be higher than the 11 inches, you can always boost that skimmer up with something underneath it, but you're going to have enough room, obviously, to be able to get that cup out once you've raised that skimmer up. You also want to look at tank size rating, and I prefer, if I can look it up on Bulk Reef Supply, I like that because it's a little better than looking at the rating that the skimmer manufacturer has for that skimmer. If you have a skimmer that is not sold on Bulk Reef Supply, which is kind of doubtful, they have most of them, you're going to need to kind of wing it as far as trying to go with information that the manufacturer provides on the size of tank for that skimmer. On this particular one, the Curve 7, they list, what I like about Bulk Reef Supply is they list light-bodied, medium-bodied, and heavy-bodied, which is most common to go with the heavy. That would obviously be best if the skimmer can handle heavy load in that tank. It fluctuates quite a bit. Light body for this skimmer is they have at 180 gallons. They have medium bodied at 125 gallons, and they have heavy bodied at 90 gallons. So they're saying it can go double the size tank if you have light bodied. So you would generally want this skimmer for something around 90 to 125 gallons. You'd be getting a little small if you go over the light or medium bodied, the heavy or medium bodied recommendation. Buying used, couple things to keep in mind here. The most important part of a skimmer is the pump. Bodies, you can find them all the time. That's the lower expense part of the skimmer. So it's important that you have a good pump. You're gonna want to see that pump in action, but you're also gonna want to take off the volute cover. You're gonna want to look to make sure that when you pull that impeller out, if you have a pair of needle nose pliers, sometimes on the bigger skimmers you sort of need that because the impeller has a really strong magnet. It's hard to pull out of there. Be careful pulling it out. You don't bust a ceramic shaft or something like that. When you pull it out, you of course want to make sure the shaft's not broken. You want to make sure that if it has, most of them have rubber grommets that help hold that shaft in. You want to make sure those are there. And then with the impeller itself, you're going to want to make sure that it looks like a cylinder. If it looks like a barrel and it's swelling in the middle bigger than the sides, don't buy that skimmer because you're going to have to get a new impeller. Plus the skimmer may have been routed out by that impeller. That pump is just not worth investing in the new impeller and using. So move on from that point. Also, when you do have a skimmer and it's functioning, impellers can go out about every 2 years. I suggest every 6 months to a year, pull your impeller out, make sure it's not swelling at all, make sure it's not cracked, because if you don't replace an impeller before it's too late and it swells up and it locks itself into the pump, and then the pump of course is plugged in, so there's magnoelectric stuff going on there, that impeller gets locked in, welded in, you can't get it out, you've ruined the pump, end of story. So about every 6 months, pull it out, go ahead and look at it, make sure that impeller is going good. Don't try and build your own skimmer either. Put that in the used section. It's not worth it. They're very pump specific. There's really more to them working correctly than it looks, and so I don't recommend doing a DIY on a skimmer or DIY on a skimmer. Now, most important thing is water level. We talked about water level in your sump. It has to be constant. Most of the time it is because the water is flowing over a baffle that's in that sump. Water's coming down into there, so that section of the sump is always going to be at the same level. If for some reason your sump is designed so that it is not, and the whole sump evaporates together up and down, you're going to have to either put in a baffle so you can have constant water level, or you're going to have to throw an ATO on there so that you keep that water level constant. The reason for this goes with hang-on skimmers as well, is when your water level goes up and down, as it goes down, the water level inside your skimmer is going to go down, and your skimmer is no longer going to be adjusted properly and pulling foam. So if you have a hang-on, you got to make sure to keep your tank topped off fairly regularly. Got to have constant water level for an in-sump skimmer. Now, as far as adjusting that skimmer, when you pull off the cup, you've got a lip here on the skimmer. We want to get that thing adjusted so that the water is just barely flowing over the top of that area there. That's generally going to be about a decent level for that. Now, skimmers have three things that can affect the water inside. The amount of water that pump's throwing out, the amount of water that we're allowing to escape from the skimmer, and that's adjustable, we'll talk about that, and the water level where that skimmer is sitting in the sump, which hopefully we've got that within the range that's recommended for that skimmer. Most skimmers are going to have a tube here that turns, and when I pull this tube up, you'll see on this one that it's got a big hole there. Sometimes it's going to have an angle cut on the tube and not a hole. You can see that if I have it all the way over here and I push it down, it's closed. So most likely that water is just going to keep coming up and flowing into the cup and flowing over. They do have like max 321 written up here. I'm never quite sure where the dot is. Like this one on max, at least is pretty self-explanatory. The opening's there. Max would be when that is straight to the skimmer so that a maximum amount of water is flowing out of that skimmer. If you're not sure by labeling on here, just pull it up, look at where it's at, and go ahead and position it so that it is in the max flow position. Your tube will go back down and you're in max flow. What that means is we're letting the maximum amount of water come out of this skimmer, and that's where we want to start when we plug it in and start with our adjusting on the skimmer. Now, if you plug it in and you have the maximum water coming out and you don't have a way to adjust the pump, we'll talk about that in a second. And even if you do, usually you want that pump going full bore, you're going to have to raise the skimmer. And so what you do is, well, that's completely open, water's coming into the cup, you've got it wrong, you're going to take your cup off, then you're going to grab your skimmer and you're going to slowly raise it, and you're going to see about what you're going to need to put underneath to have that water level where we want it, just barely coming over that edge. You can use whatever you want to boost that up. There are commercial skimmer stands. To me, they're kind of a ripoff. You can use red bricks, any kind of spacer to set that thing on that is the amount that you just determined that you need to raise that skimmer up. Otherwise, if the water is too low in the skimmer, you're going to slowly tighten this, turning the tube so that you're cutting off a little bit of the outflow, which is going to cause that water to come up. Do this slowly because it's a delayed reaction. It's kind of like the hot and cold water in your shower. You do it too quick, you fry yourself. You do it, you're too cold, you got to go slow with your adjustment on that. You will also see some skimmers that have a valve right here instead of the turning tube. Same thing, there's an open and close on the valve. You're going to have it completely open when you start adjusting, and then you're going to slowly cut that back until you get that water level inside the skimmer where you want it. That is about all there is to protein skimmers, except you will have some DC skimmers and maybe a few others that have a manual valve on the pump. The DC skimmers do allow you to adjust the amount of water flow coming through the skimmer. I only use that in cutting down that water flow. If I have one that's flowing over and I can't raise that up, I might adjust the water flow in order to bring that water level down into the skimmer. Otherwise, I want it on full bore. I want to be skimming big time. And believe me, skimmer is the most important piece of equipment. There is lighting. That, of course, is really important on reef tanks. But skimmer, as far as filtering goes, more important even than filterization. It is a type of filterization, but skimmer is extremely important. So get a good one, get it adjusted right, and you're half of your battle in terms of your nitrates, phosphates, all that bad stuff is solved. Thanks a lot for watching. If you do have any questions for us, as always, look us up online. We have Instagram, Facebook, website, telephone, email. You can find all of that. We do a lot of videos. You can find us on YouTube to look those up, or simply go to our Facebook page. They're all on there as well. And look it up. Text us, email us any topics that you may want us to cover, either in an article or in a video. We'll be glad to try and work those in for you and answer any questions that you have. Thanks for watching today.